So I've been pondering the energy of Aquarius for some time and recognizing its blind spots. Myself being an Aquarius moon, a state or placement that I consider to be double blind. And we're going to talk about that. My thought is that there is a bit of a danger when it comes to the idea of truth and the fact that Aquarius is a fixed air sign. Once Aquarius comes to this objective truth, it's going to hold to it. That is it. It is truth and it will stand by it, and all its actions will be governed by that same truth. I find this to be very dangerous, especially when we're thinking of society moving in that direction. No, we're not thinking about an individual with this particular energy. We're thinking about a collective system which has this particular mindset. Some of the issues that I'm finding here is the mental process which this truth is discovered through. If the mental process is rash and impatient and in service of some other means other than the truth itself, and the actual system is at risk. Using an individual example, if that individual has a Mercury, that's a fire sign, say Aries, the point of the mental process is to come to a particular conclusion. The process serving a Martian objective, and that objective is to get something done, right? It's to apply a force towards some sort of subject to bring something into being. Then the mental process is not going to be as meticulous, and therefore they are going to come to that conclusion as to what truth is very quickly and often very rashly as well, depending on the state of Mars and all of that. And dignity aside, it really depends also on that individual, because that's of what our energy is doing in the chart. Everybody have their own decisions as to what they do with the energy that they possess. So an individual can use this for good or for bad either way. Another thing I'm thinking of is if the mental process is also fixed. So the identity is fixed in Aquarius and the mental process, the Mercury, is also fixed. In this particular case, there will be some amount of processing as well. It will be a little bit slower, not as rash or as speedy as a fire sign, but also going to be rigid. So once it comes to its conclusion, that is it. The process itself is rigid, the conclusion is rigid, and this creates multiple blind spots because you have two fixed entities, one leading into the other. If the mental process is impersonal, like Mercury in Gemini, then this might lead to some amount of flexibility in that identity. It's of course not going to be as fluid as Sun or Moon in a mutable sign or even a cardinal sign, but it's still not going to be as rigid as somebody who has double fixed energy in both their mental process and their identity. I'm really only looking at the Sun, the Moon, and Mercury in this case because I believe that these are the three planets, the three aspects of the psyche that is really, it takes up a big chunk of the identity, right? So that's why I'm not thinking of Mars or Venus here. Obviously Mars and Venus does have influence, but it can get overridden by the Sun, Moon, and Mercury, in my opinion. I look at Aquarian energy as an eyeball, an observer. It's looking out on all that is and looking at it in a very objective way, a very detached way. The reason for that detachment is because an eyeball cannot see itself, right? I think that the whole point of Aquarius being right before Pisces is to really look out all that has been manifested throughout all of the signs from Aries up to Aquarius. Observe what is. So make some decision as to what is truth, what needs to be removed for us to create some sort of perfection. That's that Saturnian influence because we're creating a new framework that is going to stand the test of time for future. And so it's looking out on all of what exists to extract the good, absolutely get rid of what is not useful. I think this has to come before Pisces because there's a certain amount of perfection that's required when we are maturing. And before we get to Pisces to dissolve, to go through this unbecoming process, who are we? What are we? We have to know what we are, right? I think Aquarius is really answering that question. Who am I? Who are we? What are we? What have we done? What have we created? I think this is the objective of this framework building. Really come to some level of perfection. But Leo is knowing itself through its being seen, right? It's in the self-expression and being seen that Leo understands itself, because all of the energies at the bottom of the wheel are coming into the understanding of the self. But by the time we get to Aquarius, still trying to understand ourselves, but we're doing it differently. We're using, there's a mirror here basically that we're utilizing. Instead of being seen, no, we are the ones that's looking and observing to understand. Problem I'm finding with how we are operating in this energy in our current society is very immature, because the eyeball does not recognize that it's actually observing itself. The observer is observing all external in order to understand itself. So the global vision is the vision of the self. And this to me is the strange essence of Aquarius, and the whole reason why it cannot be pinned down or really predicted, because it is multifaceted. It is the collection of all, right? Not in its dissolution and its lack of individuation, which we are going to achieve in Pisces, but in its totality, in its full individuation, it is a multifaceted entity. This is why it has to observe itself through perspective, the lens of others, observing all. Still working through this aspect of the thought, so may not be communicated clearly, but I just see the energy as very multidimensional. It's very old, very multidimensional. But the challenge that we're having in modern society, I believe, is the fact that Aquarius energy completely sees itself as separate. It believes that its detachment means separation from what is being observed. This Aquarius detachment is very easy to recognize in the Aquarius sun, because the object of its observation is separate from it, and being that the core of the individual is in the moon, right? It's very easy for an Aquarius sun, I believe, to recognize its identity as separate, recognize its identity within that moon sign. The sun is already an outward facing energy, right? So it being in the sign of Aquarius, it's outward facing and it is detached. But who am I? When an Aquarius sun asks that question, their self remains intact, because their moon perceived as this other energy. Their whole movement through this Aquarius energy is completely conscious, and their subconscious self is completely intact and separate, because the Aquarius sun is detached. So the Aquarius energy in this case is more of a function, right? And they can completely detach at any point. For the Aquarius moon though, it's quite weird. This is when I think the stakes are raised. It becomes quite dangerous also. I think it will depend on the sun sign as well. I think some Aquarius moons are likely to over-identify with their sun sign. Their sun sign is not one that is completely detached. Then they're probably going to identify strongly with their sun sign. Why? In my finding, my experience, being that I also have a very detached sun sign, and just the whole organization of my chart in general is very detached. The core of the experience of the Aquarius moon is not knowing who they are. When you return to the core of your being, all detachment from everything else, what is there? What is there to observe in the self? This is what I call the double blind, because now the observer is passed into the subconscious. The observer is not conscious of itself. I think it's very challenging to self-reflect depending on the placement, the other placements in the chart. I think it's dangerous is that even though the observer, the experience of the self is in the subconscious and it's detached, there are still conclusions being drawn, right? And these conclusions basically get lost in the subconscious. I hope you're following what I'm saying here. Basically what I'm finding is that the self-concept of the Aquarius moon is fixed and is often hidden, locked away in the subconscious self. And I think that this can be a source of great emotional turmoil and anxiety in the Aquarius moon, and a place or a state of being that is very difficult to unlock, is very difficult to perceive, is very difficult to understand, right? And this is the reason why I believe there's a lot of issues with emotional processing. Aquarius moon upbringing is generally one of being, it's generally a very cold upbringing, as the moon being in Aquarius is already a challenging state. The moon is already undernourished in this particular state. If the moon is undernourished in the sign of Aquarius and it's also facing a lot of hard aspects like mine, there is the tendency for the life or the upbringing to have some very dark turns, some very cold experience. And I'm finding that in this upbringing, the self-concept is being created and it's buried, right? That fixed belief system is buried and now subconscious to the Aquarius moon. So I think oftentimes the Aquarius moon is operating on a program that may be erroneous, may be toxic, may be self-deprecating, may be cold as well. And I want to talk about the whole idea of being cold, because I don't see being cold or detached as anything negative. It's just a nature, right? Being cold does not mean you're uncaring. It just means that you won't care in a particular way, right? But the coldness that I'm thinking of here is on feeling. Yeah, so basically, I think self-concept work is something that is very strongly needed in Aquarius moons, right? This is a quite peculiar energy. And it is so polar even in its own expression, to the point where an Aquarius sun is very different from an Aquarius moon. I don't think there's that extreme polarity between the sun and the moon for other signs. But at the end of the day, the whole quest for meaning and understanding and observing and coming to the understanding of truth for the Aquarius moon is to understand the self. I think that's really what it is when it's in the moon placement. Who am I? Who am I really? Is it a combination of what I've experienced? Is it my assigned duty, or who I've decided that I am? And if it is my duty and who I'm assigned to be, who assigned it? When was it assigned? Was I in agreement with that assignment? And what program and paradigm am I navigating life through? But there's a little bit of a block here because I consider it's double blind. So it's very challenging to really dig into this part of the psyche, being that it is Aquarian.